Hello and welcome to a CX Moment. I'm Sarah Reed from Zendesk, and in these candid conversations, we chat with leaders about what's happening with their business, their support centers, and of course, with their customer experience. We love taking questions during a CX Moment, so please drop them into the Q&A. We're a large group today, so get your questions in so we can make sure that they get answered. Now, before we say hello to Robert Siniscalchi, I even practiced that from Snap, let's take a quick audience poll. We're curious if you are an active Snapchatter or not. And there are no right or wrong answers, as we're all here to learn about Snap and about Snapchatting. So let us know if you're an active Snapchatter. I will admit that I am not, but I do have an 18-year-old stepson who is, and so I feel like I know a lot about this, but I am excited to learn more. All right, so how are we doing with our poll? Let's put up some results. Oh, Robert, you got some work to do here today. We have 8% who are pretty active. They have already snapped someone today. 16% are refreshing their streaks, and 76% is hoping to learn more today. Do any of those numbers surprise you?
Not really. Actually, I might have seen a higher number on the snap streaks. That's a pretty popular feature.
Well, you will have to potentially explain that today so people know a little bit more of what that is. So let's do exactly that. I think a lot of people know what Snapchat is, but you're more than that. Let's start with an overview.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Siniscalchi.
Oh, you say that so much better than I do.
Practice many years. Robert Siniscalchi, Technical Program Manager, Snap Inc. So as Sarah mentioned, we are not just Snapchat, the primary app that we're known by. We also offer Bitmoji options, spectacles. We have a merch store. We also have a very prolific and productive creator network and developer network where creators and other artists are able to come onto the platform and develop really cool experiences for Snapchatters. And there's also a large advertising unit too. So we have this option.
So you're B2B and B2C, which can certainly get a little tricky at times.
Yes, especially in the support realm.
Well, we'll get into that, I'm sure. I bet you there's some audience questions about that, but I know you and I will start to talk about that in a bit. But I'm curious, just to sort of set the foundation for our conversation today, what do you consider to be your customer support philosophy?
Sure. I would say our primary guiding principles are around privacy and safety. It's a huge consideration for us, number one concern, really across the board, especially when it comes to support. We're dealing with many different individuals, and we always want to make sure they feel safe and taken care of on the platform when they're reaching out to get support. From a practical standpoint, we generally focus on frictionless customer experience. We use the term publicly, but also internally, that we want to be the fastest way to communicate. So we've taken that ethos and applied it to our customer support strategy. And we just want to make sure that when someone needs to get in touch, we're available.
So that's a very interesting philosophy, that you've made this connection to what your customers expect from essentially each other, right? The fastest way to communicate. And it's certainly snapping is a heck of a lot quicker than sending an email or even text messaging for that matter, which is why my 18-year-old completely ignores all the text messages I send him. But what are some of when you talk about the value proposition of Snap, what is that to your customers other than the fastest way to communicate?
Sure. A lot of it comes down to connecting with friends. So as you mentioned, it's a younger demographic primarily, but we're also very involved with other age groups. And so what we want to do is provide an experience where people can connect with one another and have a good time. It's a very positively oriented product experience. And so we'll take different opportunities in the app to connect with customers. And from a support standpoint, we really do try to meet them where they're at. So we understand that there's a particular experience that our different persona groups will be looking for when they use the app. You mentioned your 18-year-old, I think, using it in place of texting. So it's a very heavy daily usage. We have others who are much more interested in content consumption or content creation. So that really informs how we try to connect with them as they're using the app as a support team. And we hope that we're there when they need us.
So you mentioned being where they want to be. So how did you decide on your specific support channels? If I recall correctly, you have live chat, you have in-product support, and certainly a very robust help center. But how did you decide that those were the right ones for your customer base?
Absolutely. We have a couple help centers running on Zendesk Guide. We also have at least one, possibly others, internally built solutions. Based on my understanding, I've been with Snap for 4 years now, always working in the support space. It was also, I think we're celebrating 10 years as a company this year. So just to put it into context, we're growing.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. Very excited about it. We developed our support ecosystem more organically at first, which is to say that it began as a help desk solution because we knew we wanted to get in touch with customers. We did actually come off with a different product several years ago onto Zendesk. And from there, we really grew based on how the business was expanding. I'm not sure exactly when we brought on the live chat experience, but that was also an extension of wanting to provide an extended experience for our customers. And now we're taking a more holistic approach. It's actually a key focus area for us, is to look at the customer journey across all of our different support touch points and really develop an omni-channel strategy that allows us to take advantage of some of the things I mentioned before about how they're using our mobile app product, but also experiences on the web and other channels that we make available. So I'd say it was organic at first, but what we're doing now is really taking stock in what each of those look like and how we can smooth some of those connections.
And why not phone support?
Why not phone support? We did try that for our advertiser network not too long ago. We ran a pilot. Ultimately, it just didn't make sense for the business at the time. Still to this day, it's not our approach, our primary approach. We've decided to index towards the way that our customers are already using the product.
And it is sort of ironic, isn't it, that most of your users are using the product on their phone, but they would never even think about using the phone to actually contact support. So it is just fascinating when we dive into what your user base is really like. And you mentioned that the Snap user base being pretty unique in that they do tend to steer younger, but they're also very engaged. They have this large spending power. I'm curious what your retention strategy is for them. Like, with so many things that they can do, how do you make sure that that Snap is front and center for them?
Absolutely. Retention on the whole, I'll leave to our growth team to speak to
Sure.
the methods that they use to make sure that everyone's sticking by. But from a support standpoint, we try to listen and observe and understand how our Snapchatters are using the product. And we believe that by iterating and providing a relatable, understandable, intuitive experience for them, that they'll keep coming back. And again, part of this sense of safety is that we also want to make sure that they're comfortable reaching back out. So we really do take a deliberate approach towards understanding the language that's being used, some of the different pain points in the customer support flow across any channel. And we prioritize those first to make sure that it's an enjoyable experience. And we believe that, the less friction, the better.
The less friction, the better. And so let's dive into that just a little deeper, because I How does Zendesk help you with that less friction side? So you mentioned that customer support is a big component of retention and loyalty. So where does Zendesk fit into that?
Sure. At face value, it's just having solid help center and live chat capabilities. So there's, I'll use our chat experience as an example. The customizability, and I guess this also applies to the theming for the guide help centers, is key for us. Being able to code experiences that our visual design and product design teams have envisioned, and that they're synchronous with the app, so there's less of a learning curve in customers trying to understand what it should look like when they interact with us. That flexibility really helps us achieve the goal of breaking that initial barrier and making sure they can move in pretty quickly when they need support.
Do you ever find that agent knowledge is a challenge? And the reason I'm asking this is, based on the usage of your customers, it seems like they may sometimes know the product better than anyone else. Like they're in it all day, every day. So how do you keep agents to be at the top of the game alongside their customers?
Absolutely. Expanding rapidly also is part of that consideration for my team. One of the things specifically that comes to mind is macros. That's a huge benefit for us as we are bringing on new individuals to the team and also trying to create consistency in the support experience. I'm curious, actually, as a feature, maybe if this is something original or more recent on the Zendesk product lifecycle, but in general, macros are a huge benefit for us when it comes to keeping our teams aligned and also distributing knowledge between teams, because we can have our copy team working on the information that's available, and then we can use that to train our support network.
And how many people do you have internally who are building out those macros and grabbing all that information that might be coming from customers, might be coming from agents themselves? Like, what's your team look like?
Great question. For a very long time, the answer was one. Shout out to Kelsey here. So
way to go, Kelsey.
Yes, 100%. Incredible work. And it's not an easy job, especially when we're talking about multiple products at one time on the business and the Snapchatter customer side. But that team has expanded more so very recently. At this point, it's 2. And I believe we have another one on deck, if not already in. So it's getting close.
All
but
right.
yes, that team has definitely demonstrated the importance and the need for really quality content. And so that has been a huge benefit for our support organization.
And how does an agent give you intel that I've been hearing this question 5 or 6 times now, and I'd love to get a macro, or I'd love something in the help center? Like, how does that information get to Kelsey and her team, or to Kelsey?
Absolutely. The team of Kelsey. So we use internal task management tools for ticketing. We have some portals similar to how our IT organization functions, and they can proactively send a request with some details. We simplify that workflow as much as possible. But asking the question, it makes me think of one of the other benefits that we're looking to pursue that's available on the platform. And we haven't enabled it yet. One of the reasons is because we don't have a help center and a service app support, as it's known, running on the same stack. So we don't have this benefit available, but it's something that we're looking to implement at some point. And it's I want to say, it's one of the knowledge capture apps where the information becomes available to agents internally based on experiences of other agents and also behavior from end users. So we've seen this capability before, and it's something that we're actively interested in introducing so that our agents can benefit additionally from.
And now you're taxing my brain, because I can't think of the name of it either. So if there's someone from Zendesk watching right now, like, help me out with the name of this. I'm going to blame the tequila tasting that we were both part of yesterday afternoon. We should be drinking tequila after we do a live event, not before. But anyway, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And it is pretty awesome that you can get, your agents can now get these commands basically that say, hey, like this is, oh, and Patrick was at the tasting too. So thanks, Patrick. Come on, ask some questions. Is that why the audience is so quiet? Everyone was part of the tequila tasting yesterday. Come on. All right, so let's keep talking about feedback. We touched on how agents get feedback, knowledge capture apps. See, you were right, or maybe right. That's what Rachel says. So you were right there. Let's talk about, how does customer feedback get to you? Because that's a super important part, particularly with, I would think with Snap, is that I expect you get a lot of feedback and a lot of feature requests. So where does that come into? How do you collect it? What do you do with it?
We certainly do. Absolutely. We have a very vocal audience working on the product, and they're all very passionate about it. So we love that. We really value feedback from customers. So it's also evolved more organically. We started with observation of this information in aggregate. So we were basically looking for trends in what we were hearing from customers through dashboards and reports. And there tend to be, and I guess that covers two different types of information. So one of them is very much near real time, and we're listening to problems or issues with the product, maybe based on a new release or just something that we hadn't anticipated that's affecting their immediate experience. So that's very much a form of feedback that we listen to, and we really rely on our customers to provide that information to us so that we can make sure we're delivering a top-notch app experience. On the other side is the longer term, we'd like to have this, why don't you have this type of request from customers. And so we also have reports and quantitative information and tools available that help us observe that. But we've also been creating programs internally to collect that information. Sometimes we'll engage with customers just to get more information about what it is that they're requesting. We have opportunities to submit screenshots as well through some of our contact channels in case there's things that they actually want to display with their request. And we have programs, we have robust internal programs with product and engineering that hold us accountable as a company to our customers and what they're asking for. And we use that to inform our product lifecycle. So it's always really exciting as a support organization. Customer operations is how we refer to ourselves, to see something that we know has been asked for a very long time, and to be able to participate in these programs with our product and engineering teams. And they're listening. They also really appreciate this information. They want to make the app better and deliver what people are asking for. And then to see that come to market either quickly or after so many years where it made it onto the roadmap, that's always a really good moment for us. And we're really proud as an organization to be able to foster that knowledge and information and really see it come to light after all that effort.
What you're talking about is so important, that alignment and connection to the product. And certainly that is aligned then to your full business strategy. Was it always that way? Because I know so many companies that say that, so many customer support leaders who say they really struggle to get their upper leadership, their executives, to understand how imperative that frontline support connection is to the product, or that product doesn't want you involved because it's like, hey, this is our space. Like, we know what we're doing. Was that something you had to build?
It's something that we're always building. Absolutely. I think a lot of it is just about education and demonstrating the value that is behind the information that we collect. Snap as a company is very customer centric. So we are lucky enough to have leaders who understand the importance of understanding your customers and really understanding their needs and recognizing that a positive experience for them is in everyone's best interest.
I want to talk a bit about scale, because you've grown really tremendously over the past year. And so I think the number is something like 22% year over year, which is pretty extraordinary. What are some of the mechanisms that you put in place to help you scale without it impacting the customer experience or even your agent experience for that matter?
Yes, absolutely. That has definitely forced us to adapt our workflows just based on the rapid increase. The first thing that comes to mind is really the business rules and automations that we rely on to sustain our operation. We have triggers and automations. We have been looking at those much more closely just to understand where the highest volume of activity is, and if there are opportunities for us to provide additional automations that might help us support a larger number of individuals with less human effort. And also actually extending that into the customer experience. So we're looking at the customer facing channels that prompt those automations and trying to find opportunities there where we might also be able to enable the customer to self-serve more proactively. A major concern for us as part of this scaling, which I'm not sure how unique of a problem this is, but Snap's instance and our customer base, our brands, all of that, it's a lot of information to deal with. So we receive a lot of tickets. And one of the areas that I've been focused on closely with my team is this storage and infrastructure challenge. So we're looking at ways to ensure that our tickets are all landing where they ought to. And even on the back end, we're looking at how we store that information to make sure that there are no negative impacts to the agent experience if views are misbehaving or if we're having trouble loading certain forms. We want to understand what that relationship is in just sheer ticket volume. And I've had great help from folks on your side, on the product and infrastructure side. Another shout out to Wade as well for everything that he's kind of coached me through and really understanding front to back how what I'm seeing as a customer really interacts or really relates to what it's like for your team on the product side. And that's helped me, that's really defined my work. And I can now just make decisions based on some of those second and third degree considerations.
I'm sensing this beautiful journey that it's starting really with what the customer is experiencing and seeing, and then it filters into now what the agent, all their data and the experience that they have, so that they can direct that back to the customer. And now you're taking that agent experience and bringing it back to Zendesk to tell us what features and functions that you really need in order to maintain that really tight connection between customer and an agent. I love that story. That's beautiful. So we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to talk a bit about, I'd love to get your advice. So you've been talking about how customer support is so essential, but it's not an inexpensive venture. Like, to do good support costs money, and more users means more support, which means more money. And this is something we hear time and time again. So what advice do you give to keep support from being considered a cost center versus a help center, a support center, a profit center?
Absolutely. Well, as we talked about earlier, demonstrating that value to the rest of the company is a great first step in educating your colleagues internally about the value and the importance of recognizing customer feedback and providing a solid support experience. Beyond that, we have just very talented individuals. We're a very small team. on the support side. And everyone, we have a strategic arm that thinks holistically about these problems just to make sure that we're covering our bases. And then we also have just tremendous help from Zendesk. I mean, there's always new features. One of the things that we've really taken advantage of that help us operate within budget, let's say, is the early access programs and just changes to the product. So we stay in very close touch with our customer success team, who I've seen a couple of comments on the call. It's great to see you all or hear you all, I suppose. And they have helped us take advantage of these new features and opportunities. And so rather than adding to cost, we're able to take advantage of new features that help us expand our operation and really maximize that benefit without necessarily purchasing additional SKUs or products through the contracting life cycle. And that would be my recommendation to anyone, really, is use the resources that are available. Even if it's just information you have about the product, be an ambassador for support and really stay closely connected with the individuals that are aligned to your business and to your account. It's been a great help for us.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. And yes, our customer success teams are extraordinary. And if anyone is ever interested in what's new from a feature and a function perspective, we do hold a What's New webinar every quarter. And we're changing it up this quarter too. It'll be very interesting. And so I encourage you all to go to it. And then I want all your feedback because it's the format's changing a little bit, which is exciting. All right, so before we go, what is one Zendesk tip or trick that you want to share? You've already shared some great intel around macros and triggers. Anything else that you want to point out?
I will just reiterate, use those new features. Stay apprised. There's so much information out there, and it has been a huge asset to us. I mean, shout out to your support online resource center. There's forums, there's tons of great articles. As a small team, we rely heavily on that information just to guide and even sustain questions that we get internally. So for me, I say, if you can get there, if you've got it, use it. There's a lot of great information out there.
And please become a part of our community. You can find our community on the Zendesk website. And it's also just a great place to interact and network with other people in the Zendesk ecosystem and learn some new tips and tricks. All right, Robert, that's it for today. Thank you so very much for sharing your expertise. Thank you for talking about the knowledge capture app, which we didn't, we knew what it was, even though the name wasn't immediately popping up for us. And thank you to everyone for sharing a moment with us today. Please check the chat for a short survey, as we'd love to hear your feedback. And then join us on June 24th. That'll be our next CX moment. And we'll be talking with Yext about the power of search and self-service. Until then, be safe, be helpful, and we'll chat with you all again soon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.